David, thank you so very, very much for that very kind introduction, and to you and your wife, Dorothy. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Both my wife, Marie, and I love this holy site, and it really is a privilege to share some thoughts with you. They told me to speak for a half hour. I won't. I've learned the lesson over the years. I've been in Congress now 45 years, and I do a lot on Lyme disease, and about 5 years ago, I was the keynoter at a Lyme disease conference, 1,000 people, and I said, how much time do you want me to speak? They said, well, you got a full hour. I took the full hour, biggest mistake ever. At the end of it, there were a lot of families there. A little girl came walking up, about 3 years old, 4 years old, and said, Mister, your speech was long and boring. I thought, okay. She left. Her father came up a little while later, just a few moments later, and said, you know, I saw you talking to my little daughter. I just want you to know, I don't know what she was talking about, but she's at that awkward age, she just repeats whatever she hears. So I haven't done anything over 10 minutes since. So again, I thank you for this privilege. It is really an honor to be here. You know, the message of Fatima is life-changing. Indeed, it is world-changing. Our Lady has taught us, inspired us, motivated us, and above all, blessed us, and especially those who have listened and carried out her messages. You know, they come with conditions. Please do it, she says. She admonishes us to please do it. Pray, fast, say the Rosary, pray for peace. And what is more compelling now with Ukraine and Russia, the Middle East, many parts of Africa in a cauldron of war and conflict, the admonition to all of us to pray for peace couldn't be more compelling than it is today. The holy ground that we are on right now, and we have found this for decades, is an oasis of renewal, of forgiveness, and reconciliation. But it is also the launching pad to take the good news of the gospel and the implications of the gospel in a society, especially in a democracy, out into the world, to promote policies that are just, to promote policies that recognize the sanctity of human life. I would like to recognize my dear wife, Marie. Marie taught at St. Hedwig's in Trenton years ago, and we met, frankly, at a mass, and we became involved in the pro-life movement right around 1973. She ran the organization, as did I, on campus, and you know, what a blessing she has been all these years. She's unbelievably wise and faithful. I can't tell you anything that I've done in Congress that I have not done in full partnership with her. I run everything by her. As a matter of fact, my floor speeches, if you like them or don't like them, you can credit a lot of it to her. I call her rewrite. Every speech I give on the floor, there's Marie. She's been through a very difficult time with illness, like many of you and your families have experienced. I mean, very difficult. She was in the hospital for 3 months, was close to passing. And we did pray very earnestly for a healing, and those prayers, we believe, has been heard. She's still not out of the woods completely, but she's making incredible progress. So thank you for your prayers for Marie Smith, my darling wife of 48 years. You know, on one visit to this wonderful place back in 1980, and just a moment ago, David mentioned this, we were here when they brought in the statue of Our Lady, who is now atop of this wonderful church, and also the very large crown, and we stood next to it, took our pictures of each other with our daughter, who is now 47. We have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and but we have always loved Holy House right nearby, the Rosary Garden, and of course this wonderful site, and the Blue Army headquarters, which does an amazing work getting out the message that we have been given by Our Lady of Guadalupe. And as you all know, the 3 young visionaries, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, they were told to offer sacrifices, something you don't hear a lot of in the modern world, but they did. They prayed the Rosary tenaciously, and of course, Their visits with Our Lady was capped off with a visible sign in 1917 when 70,000 people saw the miracle of the sun. It was just astonishing that Our Lady put her stamp of, hey, this is all real. You need to believe it and you need to act on it. And that certainly provided additional encouragement to the naysayers out there, because everybody was there. The secular press were there, as you all know. They were there to mock, to say, well, what visible sign? And all of a sudden, there it was, the sun dancing around. Some of them even thought it was the end of the world. Mary showed the children hell, and that is something that we all tend to forget about in modern times, as if it's a fiction, as if it's a fable. And she said, you have seen hell where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my immaculate heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved. There will be peace. The war is going to end. And the war she was talking about was World War I, of course. But she said, if not, there would be a world war even worse than this one during the pontificate of Pius XI. Sadly, we didn't listen as a society, and that Second World War broke out. She also predicted that Russia, which at the time in 1917 was Holy Mother Russia, a very, very strongly devout Christian nation, only to find that the communists came in with Lenin and then others to displace it with a militant atheism that doesn't just say God doesn't exist, but hates God. Solzhenitsyn, in his books, he made it very clear, it is militant atheism. Destroy God and destroy people, and the state is to reign supreme. Well, that has been going on, obviously, for decades. We're still hoping that Russia will be converted, but we do have the promise that in the end, Russia will be converted and a period of peace will be granted to the world. What a great promise, especially given what's happening these days with Putin and, of course, their horrific invasion of Ukraine. In the meantime, while we're hoping for that period of peace, there is great suffering everywhere. Crime and lawlessness is exploding. There is a great loss of faith, hope, and of charity. Human trafficking. I was at a major conference yesterday, right outside of Washington, D.C. Human trafficking is exploding. Back in the 1990s, I wrote our historic law called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 to combat this heinous modern-day slavery. We have made great strides. A lot of people have been incarcerated. The traffickers, the women, and the children have been liberated. But it continues, and it continues, sadly, to get worse. At yesterday's conference, there were many faith-filled men, and especially women who had been victimized, who are now walking on the front line of saying, we need to help those women, rescue them, and of course provide them with the faith of our Lord, which can lead to the only way that they could be reconciled and have peace. One woman said that if everything she's been through is worth it, if she could bring others to the Lord and to have them realize what she has experienced with God's forgiveness. Because she didn't do anything. She was a victim, but so many of the victims do blame themselves. In September, the House will probably vote, hopefully early September, on a legislation that I've introduced. It's passed the House twice, failed in the Senate, called the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Protection Act. If it passes, it'll be my sixth law on this. But what that does, a number of new things, providing shelter for those who have been trafficked, because very often they're re-trafficked because they have no place to go, education, and of course, employment opportunities. But the place to live is essential. We also have in the bill a situational awareness training for our young people, elementary and secondary school. And the church is trying to do its best to make our young people aware of what it is that these traffickers do, how they use drugs to seduce and to hook these individuals into the nefarious world of human trafficking. That legislation will be up in September. Hopefully it passes the Senate and will be signed into law. We all know as well that throughout the world, the persecution of the believers is accelerating. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. Another reason for all of us to pray for our suffering brethren throughout the world. Name the country, particularly where there's a authoritarian or a dictatorship, and things are getting demonstrably worse. In 2013, for example, I visited a great bishop, Archbishop Ignatius Kegama, of a place called Jos. He's now the bishop of the capital of Nigeria, Abuja. And we went to 5 different churches of his that had been firebombed by Boko Haram, which is a radical Islamist organization, a terrorist organization. What struck me was the faith of the survivors. They weren't looking for retaliation, they were looking for justice, but not retaliation. And following the lead of their bishop, they were praying even for those who had done these heinous crimes. I also met a man named Kegama. He had been almost killed by Boko Haram, and he was given a choice with an AK-47 plastered to his face. Renounce your faith or die. He said, I'm ready to meet my Lord, and they pulled the trigger. He survived. We brought him to Washington and gave incredible testimony, not only to the heinous practices of Boko Haram, but also his faith. And what an inspiration. There in a secular building, the Rayburn House Office building, you could hear a pin drop as he said, and know Jesus Christ first. So it was really amazing. As you probably know as well, Nigeria has more Christians being slaughtered than any other country on earth, mostly by these radical Islamists, and we're pushing hard to get their government to do more. I also, on a number of occasions, have been to China. And I'll only mention 2 countries because there's so many others that could be singled out. China, under Xi Jinping, sadly, has an aggressive anti-Christian, anti-faith effort underway. They're committing genocide against the Muslims, the Uyghurs, but what they're doing against the Christians is rewriting the Bible and undermining and incarcerating priests and bishops and others simply because they won't comport to Xi Jinping's ideology. We're trying very hard. I met with one bishop, Bishop Xu, way back in 1994 in Beijing. He had just been let out of prison. He celebrated Mass in a dingy apartment in Beijing, and his clarity in his eyes and in his message was, I'm praying for my persecutors. I get mad when I get a bad editorial or there's something in a campaign that's not going well. He is praying for the very people who are persecuting him. Bishop Xu, we think he may have passed, but what a true saint and an inspiration to each and every one of us. Finally, Pope John Paul II, Saint John Paul II, in his apostolic exhortation said to all of us, there is no place for idleness, that we must be involved with public life in some way or another to make a difference in our world. He said, and Marie has this by her desk, never tire of firmly speaking out in defense of life from conception, and do not be deterred from the commitment to defend the dignity of every human person with courageous determination. Marie and I have been in the pro-life movement since 1972, prior to Roe versus Wade. We have seen countless women helped by pregnancy care centers. I'll never forget one pregnancy care center in Middlesex County. The head of it was out talking to women outside of an abortion clinic and said, please, will you reconsider? We can help you. 2 of the women who had reconsidered and had their babies spoke at the conference, and it was beautiful. They talked about life. They talked about averting an irreversible decision. that would have cost their babies their lives. Later on in the program, two young girls got up, stood right next to each other at the podium, talked about their work in school, sports. It was a great conversation that they had from the podium. But then they turned to the director of that pregnancy care center and said, had you not been out in front of that clinic, and the clinic was in Menlo Park at the time, we would have been dead. That's what the pro-life movement is all about, protecting both mother and children. You all know it, and we need to be praying even more earnestly that this country, domestically and in our foreign policy, respect the dignity and the value of every human life. I will just conclude with this. I do believe by the graces that's given to us by Our Lady, and she is an enormously powerful, powerful person who loves her Son and again brings all of us to her Son and to the Holy Trinity. But we have become, because of her, a people of indomitable faith and hope. We absolutely refuse to entertain discouragement. We absolutely refuse to entertain defeat. No matter what they do, and some have resisted to the point of martyrdom, we stand firm with our Lord and we stand firm with Our Lady of Fatima. I encourage all of you to pray as never before, as you're doing, that God pour out his Spirit upon our country and upon our world, upon our leaders in Washington and in all of our state capitals, to truly be men and women who respect the dignity of every human life. And when it comes to abortion, that means both mother and baby. God bless you and thank you.